Welcome back to Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur, where the Daf continues daily until the complete revelation of Mashiach ben David, Messiah, the son of David. And before I start, I'd like to let everyone know that I recently signed up with Buy Me a Coffee. So if you find value and benefit from this content, please consider supporting my work at Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur and buy me a coffee. And the link should be included either in the subject or the description or the comments. Not subject, description or the comments. And with that, let's start Chullin 112a, top of the page. Daily Daf Yomi, Chullin 112, with the words De'agav churpe bala aval kishut grir lebe pesake ve'achil. Top line of 112a. As due to its sharpness, it absorbs the fat on the knife. But if one cut a cucumber with the same knife, it does not absorb the fat due to the same extent. One may therefore simply scrape the place of the cut to remove any fat residue, and then one may eat the cucumber with kutach. And kutach is a dish that I must say I don't have much of a desire to try it at all, but and I don't think many today would. It's some kind of a milk, like a stale milk. It's like a moldy milk with stale bread. Kind of an ancient dish, kutach bavli. And anyway, but apparently people ate it back in the day. So anyway, kilche de lifta, shere de silka, siri patach behu de lifta, shapir da me. Likewise, turnip stalks cut with such a knife are permitted for consumption with kutach, but charred cut with such a knife is prohibited for consumption with kutach, as it absorbs flavor from the knife. And if one alternated between cutting charred and turnip stalks, it is permitted, as the turnip stalks nullify the taste of the meat and the knife. Ba mine Rav Dimi merav Nachman mehu le'anochi kadab le'mincha gabe kadab le'chamcha Dechamka amar le asu dechalamai amar le shari. Rav Dimi inquired of Rav Nachman, what is the halacha with regard to placing a jug of salt used to salt meat alongside a jug of kamka, meaning kutach, a milk dish? Need one be concerned lest some of the kutach fall on the salt without his knowledge and ultimately contaminate his meat? Rav Nachman said to him, it is prohibited to place the two jugs next to each other. Rav Dimi further inquired, what is the halacha with regard to a similar case involving a jug of vinegar used to season meat? Need one be concerned lest the kutach fall into the vinegar? Rav Nachman said to him, it is permitted to place these two jugs next to each other. Umayshna lechi teichol ale kora de milcham. My time ha'isei isura, in brackets it says le isura be'ena v'hai le isura, in brackets le isura be'ena. Rav Dimi asked, and what is different about the vinegar? Rav Nachman responded, when you have thought about it long enough to eat a core of salt, you will know the reason. I don't know, was he just joking with him? When you thought about it long enough to eat a core of salt, you will know the reason. The Gemara clarifies, what is the reason then? In this case of the salt, the prohibited substance is substantive. As the traces of kutach are discernible and not nullified by the salt, but in that case of the vinegar, the prohibited substance is not substantive, since the kutach melts away in the vinegar and will no longer impart flavor. Ahu bar gozala dinafa lichada dechamka shari rav chinina bered rababi pashrunya Chinina Bared Rava bin Pashrunya. We don't have him very often. Chinina, the son of Rava of the city of Pashrunya. Amar Rava man Chakim lemishriki hai gavna ilav Chinina Bared Rava bin Pashrunya. Dichasavar ki amar Shmuel malech harehu keroteach. Hani milech adenu nechal machmas milcho. The Gemara relates, there was a certain young bird that fell into a jug of kamcha, or it's chamka, which is kutach. Rav Hinna, the son of Rava of the city of Pashronia, permitted the bird. Rava said about this, who is wise enough to discern reasons to permit the food in difficult cases like this, if not for Rav Hinna, son of Rava of Pashronia? He maintains that when Shmuel said that a salted food imparts flavor like a boiling food, that statement applies only to a food so salty that it is not even eaten due to its salt, but this kutach can still be eaten despite its salt. Therefore, it is as if both foods are cold and unsalted, they do not impart flavor to one another, provided one rinses the area of contact. V'hani mili chai avad tzali ba'iklipo v'i'is be'pile kule asu v'yimetabin kule asu. The Gemara adds, and this statement applies only if the bird is raw. But if it is roasted, it requires peeling to remove the outer layer, since roasting softens the meat and causes it to absorb more flavor. And if it has cracks, meaning pile, it is entirely forbidden because the milk is absorbed into the cracks. And if it has been flavored with spices, it is likewise entirely forbidden because the spices soften the meat and render it absorbent. Amar Nachman Shmuel Kika Shechatach Aleha Basal Asur Yachla V'Hanimili Da Asmek V'Hanimili Da Avre V'Hanimili Da Asmeche Aval Kalishta Litnamba. Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said it is prohibited to eat a loaf of bread upon which one cut unsalted roasted meat, since the blood expelled from the roasted meat is absorbed in the loaf. The Gemara adds, and this statement applies only if the meat is ruddy from the blood it contains. And furthermore, this statement applies only if so much blood was absorbed in the loaf that it passed through from one side of the loaf to the other and was visible from both sides. And furthermore, this statement applies only if the liquid emitted by the roasted meat is viscous, meaning like liquidy. Or liquidy is like thick. Viscous is like a thick. Liquidy but thick. But if it is runny, we have no problem with it. Meaning the loaf is permitted. Shmuel shari lechalbe ravunev le'eleshameb manafshach ishari lecholi al mashari yasir lecholi al mashasir shani ravuna dinina daite Rava achile v'karele chamar basa. The Gemara relates that Shmuel would throw to his dog such a loaf of bread that he held was prohibited. Rav Huna would not eat the loaf himself, but he would rather give it to his attendant. The Gemara objects. Whichever way you look at it, Rav Huna's behavior is problematic. If the loaf is permitted, it is permitted for everyone, including Rav Huna himself. And if it is prohibited, then it is prohibited for everyone, and he should not give it to his attendant. Maybe his attendant wasn't Jewish. Okay, anyways, the Gemara explains that in fact, the loaf is permitted for consumption, and Rav Huna is different. As he is of delicate constitution, he did not want to eat the loaf himself. The Gemara further relates, Rava would eat a loaf of this type, and he would call the red liquid meat wine. He called meat wine. Amar Rav Nachman Mishmoi Merichin Kli Tachas Basar Hachich Lekol Mare Adam Ad Mumis Shebo Bina Yadinan Marazut Rameshbein Rav Papa Amar Mishitale timrato. Rav Nachman says that Shmuel says one may not place a vessel under roasting meat to catch the drippings of fat until all the ruddiness of the meat's appearance has dissipated beforehand, though. One must be concerned that blood will fall with the drippings into the vessel, rendering the mixture and the vessel prohibited. The Gemara asks, how do we know when all the meat's redness has disappeared? Marzutra said, in the name of Rav Papa, as soon as its smoke rises, one can be sure that all the blood has been expelled from the meat. Maskif Ravashi v'dilma tato mata ila alo mata ela Ravashi lesle takanta ela mishde betarting ela lemilcha. Ravashi objects to this, but perhaps the underside of the meat which is closest to the coals has been fully roasted, but its upper part is still not roasted and still expels blood at this stage. Rather, Ravashi said one who wishes to collect the drippings has no remedy except to place 2 lumps of salt in it, meaning one in the receptacle under the meat and one on top in the meat itself. And now we turn to 112b, top of the page, with the word u misht ba'ye. Doing this will allow the blood dripping from the meat to stick to the salt on the sides of the vessel, while the fat will float to the top. And when emptying the receptacle, he should tilt it gently to pour the fat into another vessel without it mixing with the blood. Amar le'Rav Ravashi, umi amar Shmuel hachi, v'amar Shmuel ki kar shlichatach alei basar asur l'achlab. Shani hasam diagav duchtam disakina palet. Rav Acha, son of Re'ika, said to Rashi, and did Shmuel really say this? That once the meat's ruddiness has dissipated, it is permitted to place a receptacle underneath it? But didn't Shmuel say it is prohibited to eat a loaf of bread upon which one cut roasted meat? Apparently he holds that meat contains blood even after it has finished roasting. Ravashi replied, Shmuel holds that the meat no longer emits blood after its ruddiness has dissipated. And as for his ruling with regard to a loaf of bread, it is different there, as due to the pressure of the knife, the meat expels more blood. Amar Rav Nachman, dagim ve'oifos shemalachan zeim ze asurin hechidami v'chli she'eno menukav afilu oifos nami asiri afilu oifos nami asiri v'chli menukav afilu dagim ve'oifos nami shari. Rav Nachman says, if one salted fish and birds together, the fish are prohibited for consumption due to the blood they absorb from the birds. The Gemara asks, what are the circumstances of this ruling? If they were placed in an unperforated vessel in which the blood emitted by the birds will pool, then even if one salted a bird and another bird together, they should be prohibited, as the blood expelled from one bird will be absorbed by the other. And if the case involves a perforated vessel out of which the blood can flow, then even if fish are salted with birds, the fish should be permitted. Therefore, the Gemara answers, actually, the ruling is referring to a perforated vessel, and the fish are prohibited because their skin is soft, and therefore when they are salted, they expel their blood first, whereas the skin of birds is hard. And the fish finish expelling their blood, the birds continue to expel their blood, and then the fish absorb blood from them. If one salts 2 birds together, they expel their blood simultaneously, and neither will absorb blood from outside while expelling its own. Rav Mari bar Rachel, im lach le basar shchuta behade basar trefa. So the commented of it, the Gemara relates meat of a slaughtered animal was salted for Rav Mari bar Rachel together with prohibited meat of an animal that had a wound that would have caused it to die within 12 months, in a perforated vessel, as meat is generally salted. He came before Rabbah to ask whether the kosher meat was prohibited, as perhaps it would not have absorbed flavor from the non-kosher meat while itself expelling blood. Amar le hatameim esotziron berotevan v'kefa shelahen. Rabbah said to him, when the verse states, with regard to forbidden foods, these are the unclean to you, Leviticus 11:31. The added definite article serves to prohibit not only their flesh, but also their juice, emitted by salting, and their gravy and their spices, with which they are cooked. Even while the kosher meat is emitting its blood, it still absorbs the juices of the non-kosher meat, which are absorbed more easily than blood. This concludes 112 of Chullin.